and I'm feeling deeply inspired to be used by the divine for the message of kindness and love and power to be initiated. I've been finding that a lot of times I tell people, please don't waste your life. Do not waste it. Don't waste it with your thinking, and don't waste it with your doing. That has been a very, very big narrative that I have observed has rolled over into 2021.
Greetings, dear friends. My name is Ami Hughes, and it is a pleasure to welcome you to the World Consciousness Alliance. Here at the Alliance, the WCA, we are all about uplifting humanity. We're about promoting harmony, and we are very big on serving life selflessly and unconditionally. We inspire together brighter and more compassionate world, not only for the species of humans living and sharing life on this planet, but for all species that have come here to this planet to experience life. Today, it gives me so much pleasure to introduce you to an award-winning spiritual mentor. She's widely respected, very much loved over the world. She's an author, and she's the host of a popular radio show in America. It's called America Meditating. So without further ado, welcome Sister Dr. Jenna to the World Consciousness Alliance.
Om Shanti. It's such a delight to be with you, especially for the beginning of the year, for us to be having this conversation. And I love the title. It's my honor to be with all of you today, and for us to spend the next few moments in just raising our vibrations. So thank you for having me, and Om Shanti, Salam Alaikum, Shalom, what's up?
I like that. Okay. Sister, Happy New Year to you. And as we enter this year, the very beginning of this year, what are your thoughts for the year ahead? Perhaps you might just like to briefly touch on something that you're carrying from the past, from 2020, really wonderful lessons, experiences, perhaps that will hold us in good stead, the world in good stead, and hopes for this year.
I've been thinking a lot about how personally my vibrations can be a conduit to remind people to remember God. So I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking that the more love I can pull from God's energy, maybe that love will transcend and touch hearts, or maybe in my communications or in my behavior, it might just awaken somebody along the way without me trying to teach or guide or tell anyone. It's a really good time during this pandemic to start to deepen your relationship or connection with the source, with Allah, Jehovah, Shiva, God, Krishna, whatever's the language that works for you. And the second thing is the importance of maintaining umang, enthusiasm, in 2021. 2020 felt like, a slingshot. Remember when we used to be kids and we had this little thing, we would take the twigs of the tree and we would put our rubber bands on it, and then we would put a stone and we would pull back. So 2020 was like the pull back year, and 2021 is like, let's go forward. There must have been a lot that we have learned in 2020 emotionally about ourselves. So 2021 should be the year where you're a lot more clearer on who you are and what is it that you're supposed to be doing in this incarnation. So I'm pretty much, I've found that my enthusiasm has turned its volume up a little. And I'm feeling deeply inspired to be used by the divine for the message of kindness and love and power to be initiated. But something that I've been observing, Ami, is that I've been finding that a lot of times I tell people, please don't waste your life. Do not waste it. Don't waste it with your thinking, and don't waste it with your doing. That has been a very, very big narrative that I have observed has rolled over into 2021. So my presence, hopefully, God is being felt. The second thing is that, it's time to maintain your enthusiasm, umang. And the third thing is, please don't waste your time. Those have been my thoughts. I don't want to waste my thoughts in my head, and I don't want to waste the choices that I have to make in my life. And so that's been my message to myself, but also to everyone around me.
For those who are really trapped in trauma, having lost their loved ones due to COVID and due to other circumstances in their lives right now, what would you say to them? How do they pick themselves up from this and move forward in in harmony, or in hope, for that matter?
I would just be there for them. Whatever they need to say. I would be an ear. I would be an heart. What can you say? At a time like that, my good friend, Congressman Jamie Raskin, just lost his son a few weeks ago, right on New Year's Eve. So there's nothing you can say. I would allow myself to just be a heart for whoever has lost a loved one, to cry, to yell, to scream, to love God, to hate God, to be whatever they need to be, so that they take their time in their healing process. Sometimes your silence isn't that you don't have an answer or anything. Sometimes that's just what the soul needs, respite. It just needs comfort. And sometimes a silence that has good intentions, a silence that is intentional with love and with peace, can be the greatest comfort for a soul that's going through trauma or loss.
You were living the high life, in the fast lane, and you were the owner of a nightclub or two.
Two nightclubs. Two.
Two nightclubs, and then there was a 360-degree turn.
Who
You
said it
just
was a 360-degree turn? Couldn't I have been a very spiritual nightclub owner?
you were.
It's been a fascinating journey, everyone. And you're right. I have lived in the world. I've loved every bit of it. But when my awakening happened, it's where these two eyes aren't fed that much anymore, but your third eye opens up. That's the awakening. You start to see what you've been missing. And I started to see the heart of the matter of things. I started to see the purity of things. I started to see the meaning of things at a much deeper level. So that was my awakening that happened in my 20s. So when that happened, for me, I had realized, well, I can choose. I can continue to do my business, which perhaps gave a lot of happiness, but it was still bringing the energy of souls down. Or I can go into a different form of night clubbing, a spiritual one, where the intoxication is wisdom. When the truth accumulates in the souls, they start to dance, because where there's truth, the soul dances. And then you get this great community of individuals who are really working towards the common good. So I will have to tell all of you, in many ways I have changed. Like, I don't drink or smoke or do any of that anymore. And I don't miss it. I remember how miserable I used to feel when I would wake up in the mornings after a long night. But I do something else. And so I think when it comes on to spirituality, you're not losing anything. You're not letting go. You're just changing. And sometimes the old you also has a contract with you. And in my 20s, my contract of living that kind of a, lifestyle of pretty much having anything that I wanted. I remembered there was a really nice moment for me, I have to tell you. I had this condominium that overlooked the Atlantic Ocean, and I was on the 19th floor. And you had parking garage downstairs, and I had 3 luxury cars in my garage. And I remembered going down one day and was saying, which one do I take? The Benz, the Jaguar, or the BMW? And it had reached a point that I was going, why is this a stress for me? And at the time I had the teachings, or I had the influence of all of these women yogis of the Brahma Kumaris with me growing up from the age of 17, 18. And so here I was just having a moment, okay? I go, look, how much longer am I going to do this? So there was something that was happening inside, and it happened when I was on a motorcycle going over 100 miles an hour, and I just had this experience like God's light is ready for me, and I think I'm done here. And nothing was wrong. My life was fine. It was okay. I had a wonderful life. but I I hadn't looked deeper within me. I hadn't explored the world behind my eyes. And that's what happened in my 20s. The world behind my eyes opened up and it was completely different.
What would you say triggered that opening?
Time, destiny, all the many events that you've been exposed to triggered it as well. Whether it was the loving vibrations of the sisters' eyes, and when they would look at me with so much hope, praying that I would get out of this world of delusion and darkness and stuff. And it was the losses that I had incurred in terms of whether it was financial, maybe I made some business choices that didn't come out very well. Maybe it was sometimes loss in friendships that I've had, and that initiated a deeper query. Many things take place inside of us at an ongoing basis that sometimes leads us to that critical point where a big turnaround takes place.
So, what actually took you to America? And that was it in America where you met the Brahma Kumari sisters, the Brahma
Yeah,
Kumaris?
well, my parents took me to the BKs. My father is Indian, from India. My mother is Roman Catholic from Jamaica, and they got together, they had me, and at the age of 4, they migrated to the United States. So I just followed them wherever they went, and that's how I ended up in America. But I was raised in Miami, Florida, and I loved the beaches there, and I loved the weather. But at some point in my 20s, again, after my awakening happened, I was transferred to New York to learn under the leadership of Sister Mohini, who's the president of the Brahma Kumaris. So I lived with her for approximately 4 years, and I learned a lot from her. And then Daddy Janki, who was the spiritual mentor and head of the Brahma Kumaris, she passed away in 2020, March of 27th. She said, why don't you go to Washington? I think you'll be needed there. So I was transferred to Washington, D.C., and I've been here now for over 20-something years, and life just continues. You know, I'm more American than I am Jamaican, which is where I was
Jamaican or
actually
Indian?
born. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Sister, I'm going to ask you this question. When did you get really cracked?
Cracked open. Wow. Hey, I just had another crack, I tell you. I first got cracked when I was in Jamaica. I was involved with some business, and that's where my awakening happened, where I went into this trance-like experience of feeling God's light kind of calling me to a heaven that exists here on the earth, not up there. And there was this golden aged world, and it was like the founder of the Brahma Kumaris was in that trance vision. And Brahma Baba would look at me with so much hope again. Aren't you coming to heaven? Aren't you coming? And I would get this trance vision. So a trance vision, everyone, if you've not had one, it's like you're dreaming, but it's real. And I'm awake as I'm going through this altered experience, and I'm just walking from one room to another, or I was sitting having a moment of solitude, or I was just, laying on my bed, and then all of a sudden I went into this trance-like experience. So that was my first crack. But in 2020, I got another one, and this crack was deeper. It made me look more into myself, and it's been bringing up a lot of new feelings that I've never had before. So for me, the cracks are really important, everyone. They are the ones in which they are signaling you to pay attention to the thoughts that you've been ignoring. That's your crack. When you can catch that thought that is connected to your conscience and you respond to that, you're cracking yourself open. So my second crack happened last year. I went through a very serious health opportunity. And so first it was like, oh my God, this is a health crisis. Then after 2 weeks, I go, no, it's just going to be my health challenge. But then as I took it deeper into a more spiritual dimension, everybody, it became a health opportunity. I said, I'm not going to let this sickness take me away from who I am. I, as a soul, I am bigger than this illness. And so I said, now let's see what's going to be the benefit of this illness. So I think that health opportunity, as serious as it was, I think it also helped me to look deeper into areas in the soul that I was missing. So I'm totally open to being cracked open, everyone. And I completely advise you, do the same. It's a great feeling. You're going to feel vulnerable. You're going to feel tender. You're going to feel very honest with yourself. But there'll be something that's blossoming at the same time as you're being cracked open. It's like a flower or a seed that was planted in the ground where concrete was thrown over it. And it breaks through the concrete ground because it's just unstoppable. Because what you're feeling and going through is so grand that it just protrudes through any limits that's trying to hold you back. So yeah, let yourself get cracked open for 2021. It's a great feeling. Can
Living
I
from
tell
the
you
heart.
something? I'd be
Yeah.
talking to you and I would maybe start crying. I would never do that. This is how my cracks are taking place. And because I'm so genuine and open with my spiritual journey, people will be like, ah, she's not that spiritual. She's still having these emotions. I go, you can keep believing that. If you don't recognize that every person in their life of awaken have gone through cracks and various experiences, then you've missed the real journey of becoming a spiritually enlightened person. What I'm showing you is the authentic, true path to becoming the enlightened flower or the enlightened being that you can be by looking at your vulnerabilities, by being honest with them and honest with the people in your life, but yet never letting go. You are going to get there. You're going to get to your ultimate destination.
And it was your beloved Dadi Janki who was able to crack open
First one, yeah.
another dimension to you, right?
Yeah,
Tell us about
yeah.
that.
It was funny because my parents, my parents and even the sister at the BK Center in Miami at the time, they would look at me and this like, not my mother, but my others, they would look at me and go, she's way too worldly. She'll never do this path. So they would always say, she's too body conscious. She can't do this path. But my mother, she never gave up on me. She says, she's Baba's. We call God in the Brahma Kumaris Baba. And she would cook food in Baba's remembrance. And she would come and read me something. Or she would leave quotes or teachings of the study of the Brahma Kumaris in front of me or around me. And I think it was her faith, knowing that I could be used to be of service to a greater good, in addition to my own personal karmas and in addition to all the things I've been through, that brought me into this, yeah.
Today, you are a great influencer to many people across many lifestyles, on many dimensional levels as well. So, who would you say are your main influences in your own personal journeys, aside from the names that we have mentioned already?
My mother influences me because she's such a case. Everything about her is like a mess, and I say that with respect. Everything about her is a mess. But she carries this energy of love for God that's just spot on. And it just surprises me how one person can have so much things not right. And then there's a part of her that has this beautiful fragrance of God's energy that makes me pause to check myself, to identify what's real and what isn't. I would say my brother, who works with me every day, his virtues and his gentleness and his ability to try hard, he's been a big influence for me. I would say that I am inspired by the integrity, the dignity, the strength of Michelle Obama and the way she shows up in the US. So just so genuine, and the way she shows up in the world. She's been someone that I will look to. If she has something to say, I will listen to her. I have so many mentors in the Brahma Kumaris community that I can't necessarily pinpoint one of them, but many of them have left an indelible mark in my consciousness. But I have to tell you too, I've learned even from the current president and leadership of the United States of America. I've learned that you can be very steadfast and very focused in what you want and what you believe, even if the world goes against you and it might not be the most gentlest or most noblest way of being, I learned from looking at the way that soul operated his life is how he can have such a conviction, and doesn't matter what anyone else was saying, he stayed on it. So what I'm saying is that sometimes we learn a lot from people with a lot of virtues or qualities, but we can also learn a lot from people who are opposite to that. You know, and I started out sharing with you my mother, you know, a big colossal mess on one side, and I say it with respect. I respect the fact that she's been courageous enough to live that life for so long, and that she also has this incredible amount of energy of God's light in her. And that fascinates me when I look at her and wonder, what is this? You know, and who am I in the midst of being around all of this energy? So it's been a lot. It's been a lot of unique ways that I grow from people.
You spoke about Michelle Obama earlier. I'd like to bring in this aspect now of where you are the recipient of a number of awards, including one that's the President's Lifetime National Community Service Award. Take us through that.
It was a beautiful gesture of being acknowledged for the service that has been done over the years, and that's been precious. It's humbling. It's just humbling. You know, a lot of times we do things not really thinking about all of those accolades. Yes, I want my energy to be used more. It's not even that I want it, but it should be. It's the given. If you put energy into anything, it's natural that the energy has to show the result of that. So I don't think that we're doing it to see the results. We've gotten so many awards over the years. It's just an acknowledgement that you're on the right track. I would love to see an article in Time magazine. I just don't know what it is. I love Time magazines, right? I feel like it's one of the authentic news articles or magazines that are still out there. And I've often thought when I open it, I go, I would love to see a story with me in this magazine, whether it's on meditation. And then I've asked myself, why? I went, I don't know. When I arrive in time, I think that would be great. so interesting.
You never know. You never know. 2021 might just be the year.
You know, one never knows. Folks, send the thoughts out.
Yes. All right. And your involvement with the Empower a Billion Women 2020. Empower a Billion Women. That's a great number of women. And
yes.
Trying to wrap my head around that number. And they also, this organization, they honored you as among the 100 most influential leaders.
That was so sweet of them. Ingrid Vanderbilt is the CEO and founder, and she was one of the resident, I guess, tech advisors or developers for Dell. And as she was working at this very high-powered position, she really felt a call to empower a billion women. So she left Dell and opened up this organization, and she's using technology, microfinancing, empowering a billion women. And pretty much it's a wonderful organization. Just go to EBW 2020 and look up Ingrid Vanderbilt. And so the work that they're doing is really impacting the lives of women around the world. So again, I was very honored that I was selected for that, and I just try to do whatever I can to show up.
So you came to America, you grew up in America,
yes.
And then your radio show, America Meditating, how did that come about?
My mother was recovering from stage 4 cancer, and she was with me here at the ashram, and I would pass by her room and she would just be laying there. She has all these bags dripping, and we just spoke to each other, and I said, you know, she's got so much to give. We can't let her not do service. So we went online, looked for an online format that we could do some radio shows with her, and she could just do it from her computer, right? She could just share her knowledge, be whoever she wants to be. She has that magnetic energy. So we found a network we got into the network, and the intention was for my mother, who's also a Brahma Kumari and a very good teacher back in those days, to get her to start the show, but she's a little shy, and so she asked me if I could help her. So I said, okay, I'll help. And so we would do the show for the first 15 minutes. And for the first 2 weeks, we started to get lots of high visible personalities from David Lynch, Byron Katie. And this was just 15 minutes of a talk on the radio show, right? So from there, it went to 30 minutes. Now it's about 45 minutes. So my mother never took over the show, and, and I'm not a quitter. But I have to tell you that whenever she would read the poems or the stories, everyone would always remember her and her voice. So the American Meditating Radio, everyone, has now become one of the go-to podcasts for people to listen to. And we have experts from around the world that come on and share in areas of finance, well-being, politics, science, relationships. It's just, to me, it's my hobby. So it's on the now about 12 or 14 networks that you can listen to it on, whether it's on Spotify, iHeart, iTunes, AHA. And it just helps people to be a better version. So I call America Meditating my playroom. So I go there and I play and I just enjoy the narratives. We have now about almost 2,000 shows in the 7 years that we've been on air, and we've financed 7 retreats, which invites the guests from the radio show. We've had people like Whoopi Goldberg, Alanis Morissette, Nikki Giovanni, Edgar Mitchell, the astronaut. He passed away last year. We've just had wonderful, wonderful conversations with a lot of people. It's been dynamic.
Right. And you have people from across the spectrum coming in and enjoying getting into meditation. Normally, when we talk about meditation, they would think it's a really Indian thing or a really Hindu thing. But in America, it seems to have opened up cross-culturally to everyone. Yes?
Even a little bit too commercial for me, too. Unfortunately, sometimes you can sense that the sacredness of it is, you have to really look for it. But that's just what it is. It's the times that we're in. There's a younger generation that's getting involved with meditation, so they have a different way of looking at it. It's not wrong. But for folks like me who are a little bit older, or for my daddy Janki, who was definitely one of these bedrocks in the BK community, they see it differently, and that's okay. But I do want to stress everyone, meditation is something everyone can do, because basically you're paying attention to what you're thinking. It's not about emptying your mind, but you're paying attention to what you're thinking. And do your thoughts connect to your goals, your vision, your dreams, a higher spiritual version of yourself, or not? If your thoughts are not connected to those dimensions, then there's peacelessness. But once your thoughts are harnessed towards your goals, your dreams, a higher version of yourself, your spiritual integrity, you are at peace with yourself, because you're fulfilling the energy that you are called to fulfill in this birth. But if you're just wasting it and you're caught up in things that have nothing to do with that, then later on it will become a burden and you'll feel heavy. You'll also feel like you haven't lived your life fully. And when you realize time has passed you, you could lose money and make it back. You could lose a person and find somebody else. But when you lose time, that's something you're never able to make up.
Talking about time, Sister Jenna, in the world as we stand today, what is most needed to shift us, to move us forward to awaken that compassion within us, to really start caring about one another? Because largely the masses have really lived a life that was about me and mine. So as we move forward, how would you say we can actually lift ourselves up from this to embrace humanity as a family, not only humanity, but all species of life, including the animal kingdom, the nature kingdom, where we take responsibility for them and we bring in that kindness. Where does it all begin? I know we say we begin with self. How can we bring people, those who are not really aware yet they don't have this greater awareness about themselves. How can we help bring that about?
Everyone, 7.5 billion of us, we can do this. Slow down and start to master the smallest of things in your life. That's how you can bring change. It's when you wake up in the morning and you spread your bed, and you do it knowing that in the evening when you go back in that bed will honor you because it's clean and it's fresh and it's in order. Start with the small things of the way you dress, the way you choose to look at yourself in the mirror, the way you comb your hair, the way you cook a meal, the way you eat your meal, the way you wash a dish. Because right now, haven't you noticed, there is more resource on the planet Earth than ever before, and yet there's still 1 billion children going to bed hungry today. There's still women who are being abused. There's still poverty, illiteracy at an extremely high rate. There are human rights violations taking place in the 21st century at a time when all resources are available. Over 70% of the world is under a human rights violation as we speak. Why? Consciousness. And so if each person who watches this begins to become more mindful about the way they pick up their phone, the way they check their messages, the way they text, what they choose to watch, what they choose to listen to, that's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to make the world a better place. How many great speakers have you heard? How many inspiring movies have you been to? How many lessons did your grandparents or your parents give you to make you into a better person? Did you? Did you change? So until we make that real subtle, soft change in that small level from just where you are, I don't see the world changing unless something tragic happens. Either it's going to change through love and being aware, or it's going to change through tragedy. I will opt that we change with love and being aware.
What you say really makes a lot of sense. It is because you speak about how many times we've read all these inspiring books. All these people that we've made the movies, etc., right? But yet there seems to be some kind of concrete block that prevents us absorbing that and taking cognizance of that and reflecting upon it and thinking about it. We forget. It's like chewing bubble gum, and then once the sweetness is gone, and then you spit that out. So let's hope, as you say, that it's not going to take tragedy. Well, it started with COVID anyway. Now 2020, I mean, we hit that running with, look what it brought the entire world to its knees, and then the world had to stop. Yeah, and it actually brought the world to its knees. Let's hope it's not going to be, more deaths, another tsunami, more earth changes, etc., that would really make humanity wake up.
I don't think we should be distracted by just the pandemic or the deaths. I would like to recommend people to rise above that and ask the question, why has the universe or the destiny or the drama put a pause button on the entire world? And the reason for that is that the universe and the destiny of the drama is actually giving us a chance to awaken and to see ourselves as we really are. And if upon all of this time of the lockdown, you have gone inwards and you are not very comfortable with the person that you've become, good. Now, become aware. Now, pay attention to serving the soul. Now, make amends in your relationships. Now, do things in the way that God will be proud of you. So this whole time with the deaths and all of that, don't get caught up in that. Also keep remembering the whole world paused because this is really our chance to get our humanity right. And if we get it right, then there'll be a future golden age world that's going to come.
And do you see it actually happening? What are your hopes for it?
Inevitable. After midnight came another year in 2021. So the inevitable is that in Indian culture and in other cultures, there is a dark period, and this has been a dark period. It's called Kali Yuga. It's when the vibration of the majority of citizens on the planet have reached the stage of algae consciousness. Do you want me to break down what algae consciousness is?
Go ahead.
It's an acronym that I've used a lot. A for anger, L for lust, G for greed, A for attachment, and E for ego, which feeds our limitations. It feeds our body consciousness, it feeds our distractions, it feeds our I, me, and mine, and it feeds the energy of selfishness in our personality. So that body consciousness is really the crux of the problems of the world. And if we can get that consciousness replaced and transformed into the opposite of anger is peace. The opposite of lust is purity and innocence. The opposite of greed is joy and contentment. The opposite of attachment is love. And the opposite of ego is self-respect, self-worth, and truth. So the whole notion here is that we're being now offered this chance that the future will be those qualities. And I know way too many people who are reaching the embodiment of those qualities. The golden aged world, heaven on earth, will not exist until there are citizens that model that heavenly personality. I know way too many of them who do. So I walk with the confidence that there is a golden aged world that will come after this. Plus, I'm working on it for myself too. So I'm not the only one on the planet doing it. There are a lot of people, you're doing it. So the more peaceful and powerful and loving and charitable and kind we become, which is what your organization represents, and that's what it wants to do. It wants to build people and have people remember their greatest strengths. Then everyone involved in that market have the complete faith the future will be golden. There will be a golden age. So I don't spend a lot of time on broken down energies. So all the things that are breaking down, all the fighting, the wars, the lies, the deceit, that's because the old algae consciousness within that genre of souls, they're fighting that energy within themselves. They're not fighting me, they're not fighting you. They're actually trying to fight that energy within themselves. And at some point in time, algae gets tired. And when algae gets tired, it will surrender to the original nature of the soul. Love, peace, purity, truth, and joy.
Earlier, you were talking about the state of our mental health. And today, there are many people who are really struggling with that. So would you like to...
I have a mother who has, I don't know if she has dementia or Alzheimer's. We've had her MRIs, but we're watching her behavior has changed tremendously. And as a family, I just look back and I go, throughout my whole life, I've kind of seen that her behavior has been different. But one of the things when you're raised with a parent that might not be emotionally well balanced, it's just what you think it's normal. But as you mature and you start to understand the language and the behaviors of people, you start to realize, I don't think that's normal. So even people who are raised with a member in the family that has mental illness, actually they don't even know if it even is a mental illness. It's just what they're used to. But as they mature, they begin to see that there are differences of personalities and there's a choice that you can make. So I think watching her, I've started to have a lot more interest in trying to understand the deep root of this particular energy. And I know that it's karmic of previous births, but you can't prove that to a psychiatrist. You can't prove that to a psychologist. Only through mysticism and spirituality you can believe and say, you're just not born that way. Something energetically is happening with you as a result of actions that the soul has performed in previous births. So mental illness is something that needs a lot of attention. And I think individuals who think they don't have mental illness Well, watch yourself in the mirror when you get angry with somebody. It's a form of mental illness. And watch yourself when you're jealous because one sibling gets more attention than the other, or you suspect your spouse is having an affair with someone. Watch that. And what you'll find, that's a form of mental illness. Anything that is straying from your original peace and love and self-respect is mental illness. So it shouldn't reach to that point that it gets that high, that your behavior is just odd and unusual, which is what happens in many cases. We let it go for so long that it takes a long time for it to turn around. Depression, and I learned this from Daddy Janki. She had said it's when you are not being yourself. Over a long period of time, you are wearing a mask, and that mask is actually repressing the real you. And it's huge. So that's one thing that I've thought about. But when I have experimented with seeing what it must be like to be depressed, I feel that there is a thought that comes up inside of us that just feels like it's tired of trying to be better. And that tiredness of trying to be better pulls the soul into a slothful state of spiritual coma. And so if there's nobody there to help you through, there's nobody there that you can talk to about it, then what happens, it increases as an experience that the soul starts to feel comfort in. Sometimes feeling sad or being in sorrow becomes a comfort that serves the soul for that particular period of time. And I'm still investigating it because a lot of people, when they're in that state of depression, you don't have the language because you don't know how to decipher the emotions that you're feeling. You just know it feels very sad and very withdrawn. And you don't know how to articulate it because it could be such a culmination of so many experiences that the soul has gone through that it hasn't been able to address and to talk through. My mother was traumatized at 7 when she lost her parents. And so she ended up in orphanages and she was abused. And instead of the men, taking advantage and raping her sisters, she would protect her sisters and step into the way and say, take me. So her stuff is really intense. And she never had someone to talk about it to anyone. So I look at her that she's carrying that trauma and still doesn't know where to address that energy. Do you see what I'm saying? So in her case, yes, I could see that. But there's some individuals who've never had that kind of trauma. And they still end up in a depressed state. That is definitely the proof that the soul has been here before. And that there's something that the soul still is carrying inside of itself that is still saying, I just need to be loved out of this emotion. And the issue here is that sometimes we don't have enough love to give another soul, to love them out of that place. And we wish we did. But we don't. We don't even have it for ourselves, much less to give it to another person. So time becomes the great healer. Sometimes an event comes and it helps. Sometimes a person will come and it helps. One never knows. The solution, medicine, it's good. It's not the only thing though. Relationships, activities, so many things are involved. And I think with the pandemic, the cases of depressions have increased. Suicide has increased. Domestic violence in homes have increased. Why? Because it was always sitting in there. And now the silence is giving individuals the chance to address what needs to be fixed.
What would you say is most needed now at this time than just being there? What does the world actually need right now? How can we make it better?
I think we all need to feel safe with each other. And you can't feel safe with another human being if you don't have a connection to Source. When the soul feels a connection to Source, to God, to Allah, and a real relationship with the Supreme, then wherever that soul goes, it will feel that something wonderful will happen. And even if it goes through challenges or crisis or whatever it might be, the connection to Source will give it a sense of deep safety. And I feel that a lot of individuals, they have their belief of God. Some say God is in me, some say God is omnipresent, some say God is in this religion, some say God is in that tree, some say God is in there. And yet we're still suffering. If we have God, there should not be any sign of suffering. So I would more invite individuals to investigate a unique way of peeling away the attachments to your name, your gender, your role, your religion, your nationality, your language, and feel that spiritual nakedness. And then from that place, then invite the energy of the divine and say, okay, who would I think of if I have no more of these human tendencies? And it would be God. And then when the soul starts to think of God with that purity, the energy of God's vibration starts to fill the soul up with love, which is the greatest healer. And that love starts to really make you feel like, wow, the world will become a better place because I am feeling it. I actually have a meditation focusing specifically on this peeling away of all of these limits and identities. I'm not sure if you'd like me to play it now or later, but it really takes individuals into that space of comfort.
Okay. Well, I would be most honored if you would take us through that meditation, but a little later on when we begin to wrap the show.
Sure.
I'm thinking about our youth right now, Sister Jenna. What would be your message to our youth? Many of them are feeling very lost right now. They feel, not only the youth, but across everybody, most people, so deeply affected by whatever is happening in their lives on a personal level or on a professional level, including what's impacting on them, globally as well. What would you say to them, to our future?
I do with my youths here, I get them involved with service. I would tell youths, use your time and your energy for service of humanity. Find something that you're passionate about. Get off of social media. Get off trying to take all these selfies. Get off of trying to do these, funny looking things to get attention and attraction from social media and likes and people. Get off of that. Find something purposeful in your community, in your life. If there's anything out there that bothers you about where the humanity is going, that might be your calling. Something that you can stand up, like Greta, like so many more. We have children here in America who stood up for gun violence in the United States of America. So get up and get involved in something social, in service, and you'll find that your energy will be harnessed. Our youths of today are way ahead of the times. Way ahead of the times. So if they can do something meaningful, I did a project called a Diwali dance, and it was led by one of our cancer survivors, Aditi Goel. She's only 19. And when I told Aditi, I would love for us to do a dance that is all about dancing away our sorrows and opening up a whole new paradigm, Aditi came on board, choreographed the dance. We made it into a beautiful short film movie. And it's out there now as a legend, as a legacy, not only for her, but for everyone. And that project alone, I can't begin to tell you the thousands of people that took benefit from that experience. So youths now, just get involved in service and do something with all of that energy and creativity that you're sitting on. And you'll find that your life will take you to the top of the mountain.
How important is service then in serving, in giving?
If you don't offer of yourself to others, you're not breathing. I think that's why people get married and have kids. I think if they didn't, they wouldn't give much more. And I think that some folks need that push to practice the art of giving. So giving is a natural nature of the human soul. And what has happened is many of us have become takers to life than givers of life. So the more you serve, the more you're living your true path.
More often than not, most of humanity is always crying out and demanding my rights, my rights, my rights. But what responsibility do we have towards the earth? Because kindness and compassion and caring are definitely our responsibility. And we need to ask the question, what more can we give back to the earth? Because when we eventually leave here, when we breathe our last, we take not even a pebble from this earth. Everything is left behind. And what is it that we take along with us?
A lot of people aren't recognizing that their thoughts are connected to the climate. They're not aware that their thoughts are connected to the environment. They're not aware that their thoughts are connected to the earth. There's a project that the Brahma Kumaris did in India, Think Clean, Think Green. And it was so important because people don't stress that. They don't stress that your quality of thoughts has a lot to do with the vibrations of how the earth and the planet rotates. And so if we can start to contribute in taking care of the planet by having more peaceful thoughts, more creative thoughts, more loving thoughts, more kind thoughts, you will definitely make decisions to take care of the planet Earth. We have a project called the India One Solar Thermal Plant Project. We have over 750 dishes in Rajasthan, India today that is there to help to light up that city if electricity goes, pulling only from the nature. So when you can think about spiritual yogi people coming up with this grand idea of making one of the largest solar thermal plants in the world, it's because they were thinking clean and thinking green. So if you're not thinking that way, even though you tell me about global climate, or global warming rather, and that things are breaking down, if I don't realize that the way that I'm thinking is contributing to the breaking down, then, how much am I really helping, right? So the most important factor that we haven't really stressed on when it comes on to climate change or the global warming is to emphasize on people to change the way they're thinking about themselves and about the planet Earth.
And as you say, thoughts, clean thinking, and etc., and our actions that stem from these thoughts, they have a ripple effect on our energetic field. And this is so important. And I love what you said about how our thoughts have an impact on the climate. Elaborate on that, please, because climate is huge right now. Look at what's happening around the world. It's crazy.
I mentioned earlier about an acronym ALGE and anger, lust, greed, attachment, and ego. There are qualities of thoughts. And when that algae has consumed your personality, then your personality carries the vibrations of that consciousness. That vibration goes into the 5 elements, starting with your physical body made up of the 5 elements, but it also goes into the elements of the walls in your home, your furniture, the food that you cook. Then it goes on the outside to the trees, to the earth, to the water, to the sky. So if there are almost 8 billion of us or 7.5 billion of us, and we all have algae, that's the vibration that is spreading in the universe, in the nature. So imagine when the lockdown happened, the nature started to restore herself. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Remember,
Yes.
don't forget that
Yes.
was a great example that who was destroying the nature were people and their vibrations and their thoughts and their actions. And so the fact that everyone was more introspective and more at home and had become quieter, the nature started to restore herself. So if everyone removes the vibrations of algae from their thinking, the vibrations of the nature will feel that vibration and it will automatically restore, and we can still enjoy it. We don't have to be locked down to restore nature. We just have to be peaceful as people to restore nature.
What are the things that really mean so much to you, that really moves you?
Honesty moves me. Creativity moves me. Humor moves me. Being challenged moves me. For some reason, I don't like it easy, even though I want it easy. It moves me. In the United States of America, we have our first vice president who's a woman and half African, half Indian, like I am, same mixture. And I've watched how the new administration has brought together the diversity that's been lacking in the last 4 years. And it has been bringing together inclusion, which has been lacking in the last 4 years. I love to see diversity. I am not a person that believes blacks only hang out with blacks, whites only hang out with whites, Indians only hang out with Indians. I can't do that. I think there's something so beautiful when we are curious to learn more about each other's strengths and cultures, and to be able to blend each other's cultures, which makes a beautiful tapestry of why we're all here together on the same planet. So those are a few things. I've been looking a lot into the arts. Like, I'm really enjoying music, instruments, theater. I'm fascinated by how actors can move their personalities outside of themselves and embody a completely different person and convince me that's who they are. And I'm wondering, can I move me out of the way and allow God to just be through me? You know, so that's been something I've been playing with a lot in last year and this year. So those are just some of the things.
So if you were not with the sisters, not with the Brahma Kumari movement, what would you have been?
If I wasn't with the Brahma Kumaris, I would be a rock and roll superstar. No, I would be in business. There's no doubt. I'd be doing business. I'd be running a corporation or a company. And I'd be married. I would have children. I would keep my body in check. I would keep myself looking presentable for my husband and for me. I would have a very active social existence. I would have a lot of friends. I would live a life that is important and worthy. That's what I would do.
Do you miss that?
Not at all. Not at all.
On this note of optimism for the future as well, you know, beginning with the self and caring, let's go into that beautiful meditation that you were talking about earlier.
It's such a touching song that we produced last year, actually, out of our America Meditating Retreat. Kristen Hoffman was one of our guests, and Juilliard-trained musician, and she made that as our gift, and I just wanted to offer that. I was going to do the meditation on letting go of all of the labels, but I thought the song was just appropriate in ending such a heartfelt Renaissance conversation that we had today.
Sister Jenna, it's been my honor to speak to you. I feel truly blessed having for the WCA for giving me this most beautiful opportunity of connecting with you, getting to know you, and thank you so much for your time. It is truly appreciated.
Lots of love, everyone. Please be well, and hopefully our conversation that we had today has somehow struck a chord within you to believe more in how valuable your life is. Just don't waste it. Not this time.